I live in Branson, Missouri, and not far from my house is an abandoned theme park called Celebration City. It's been abandoned for over a decade, now having closed in 2008. It was themed after America in the 20th century. It was open in the afternoon into the evening, with each operation day closing out with a laser and fireworks display. The park featured many rides, shows and attractions, and its operation season ran from May until mid-September. I had been there several times with my family as a kid, and when it closed down, we were all definitely saddened to hear they tore down most of it, if not all of the roller coasters, before closing, but even to this day, most of the buildings still stand, and it's a little known fact that it's kind of a cool place to explore now. My friend, who I'll call Calvin, was very on board with my idea of going to check the place out. I asked him because he's a family friend and our families had been to the park together in the past. We drove over and parked in the Steak and Shake parking lot across the street, since the parking lot to the theme park had been obviously closed off for a very long time. It was around 7 PM, the sun was setting. We didn't want to go in broad daylight, in fear of getting caught or running into other people. We brought a couple of heavy duty flashlights for when it went dark. In the meantime, we could see just fine at first. We jogged across the street when no one was looking, as we didn't want to be obvious about trespassing in the park. When no cars were coming, we cut into the grass and into the trees surrounding the property of the park. It was surprisingly easy to sneak in. In fact, it didn't feel like we were sneaking in at all. Not that I'm encouraging anyone to trespass. Seeing all the old buildings and attractions I remembered from when I was a kid, still standing in this now cold and empty setting, was so eerie. It's like a part of my childhood was dead. One thing was for sure, though we were the only people in this place. No other sounds but the crickets. We couldn't even hear the traffic from outside. As we walked around, we realized so much was left behind. It was clear that people had been there since it closed because of the writings and occasional graffiti on the wall, but lots of props and such were still in place, or behind the glass and buildings. Some of the buildings had broken glass, indicating that people had broken in and explored some of them. As it got darker, we decided to crawl in through one of these windows to one of the buildings. Once inside, we realized it was the diner, once called Last Chance. It was dark inside and admittedly creepy. The front door was closed and locked. There were oddly planks of wood and I guess other random debris and objects laying around the dining space. The best I could describe it, it seemed like it was being used for storage, like things from outside were brought into there. Calvin was checking out the other side of the place. I yelled to him, "I'm checking out the bathroom." Then I proceeded to one of the bathrooms. There was a different smell in here, not possible to explain, but there were 3 stalls in here, and as soon as I got in there was a sound from one of them, like something really small being dropped to the floor. I said hello. I had my flashlight on in this pitch black room. All 3 stall doors were closed, but something made a noise in there. I held the bathroom door open with my foot, and then got on my knees and aimed the flashlight below one of these stalls, and I saw a pair of shoes and legs. I gasped and jumped, then looked under the other 2 stalls, and there was the same thing. There were 3 pairs of shoes and legs visible under the stall doors, and one of them began to move as if they were getting down on their knees to look under the stall. But I didn't stick around long enough to see their face. I was already out of the bathroom yelling for Calvin to leave. I climbed back out through the window, and he followed me, not asking questions, till we were out and away from that building. I told him about the 3 people in the stalls. He made a joke that they were taking a poo, but I knew that meant he didn't entirely believe me. I told him one of them was about to look under the stall. When I tried to explain the bizarre sight better to him, his expression changed to more of a freaked out look. We clearly weren't alone there, and if those were just 3 friendly people also there exploring, but just using the bathroom, I feel like they would have just said something as I came in, or definitely after I said hello in there. By the time we were out of the park and back to the car, it was pretty much pitch black. We haven't returned there since. I don't remember an explanation for what I saw. It was scary and weird, and definitely switched the mood of what was otherwise a fun day. I'm a 30-year-old woman living alone in a mid-lower income area. There's some crime in my town, but I don't live in a ghetto. Still, sometimes I do feel uncomfortable. I don't know a lot of my neighbours too well, other than my next door neighbours, who are both nice. The houses across the street are a different story. I like knowing my neighbours because it makes me feel a little safer living alone. I'm a big scaredy cat, so my biggest fears of living alone came true when one night I was in my bed trying to fall asleep. It was pretty late on a work night, past 11. I heard the leaves slightly crunching on the side of the house. Human or not, I couldn't tell. There are a lot of cats and raccoons walking around here at night. The following night, I was awoken to something outside my window, like a singular crack or tap. It must have been the window frame. It was October, so I had the windows open for air. So I guess out of pure instincts, I said, "Who's there?" I didn't hear anything after that. I got up and lifted my blinds and no one was there. 2 nights in a row of this, I was starting to think I was getting paranoid over the smallest things like regular house noises. So I tried to fall back asleep, but the same night I woke up again, this time to some scratching or scraping sounds from the backyard, and went out to the little living space by the back door. I heard the clicking louder. Now it was right outside the sliding door. I turned on the light in the living space, and then the sound stopped. I went over to the sliding door, which is covered by a sliding curtain. I was so scared to pull it, expecting to see someone, but when I yanked it open, like a band-aid, no one was there. I flicked on the backyard light and slid the door open. I was relieved to see no one was out there, including raccoons or some other pests. I listened to the crickets for a minute, then heard something in my teeny yard, something rustling in the bushes. I looked at the bushes. They're too thick to really see anything, but they're definitely a good place for someone to hide. And if that sound wasn't a raccoon or a cat, I didn't want to know what it was. I went back inside. I made sure everything was locked. I went back to my room and even locked my bedroom door. After about 10 minutes of laying in my bed, there was a knock on my front door. This time I was starting to freak out. I ignored it and stayed in bed. No one should be knocking this late at night. If it happened again, I'd call 911. It didn't happen again. I somehow fell asleep. Eventually, after the next day, I went straight to Best Buy with my brother, and he helped me pick out a doorbell camera and a security camera set. He helped me install both of them, the doorbell camera in the front and the other cameras in the back, both in low-key spots. My brother also spent the night that night to make me feel better. He slept in the guest bedroom. We were both in our own beds trying to get some sleep. When I got an alert on my phone, motion detected on my property, I opened the Ring app and I screamed because there was someone in the black and white video trying to pick the lock to the back door of my house. I woke up my brother and showed him the video, and he burst out of bed without shoes or socks and ran out into the backyard ready to kill someone. But my scream chased the person away, which we saw while playing back the video. My brother screamed outside my yard to never come back as loud as he could, and undoubtedly the person trying to break in heard it. We couldn't identify the man's face. He had a hood over his head, and he was wearing all dark clothing, but not in a single frame could we see his face. He was also wearing gloves, which meant he left no fingerprints. We called the police, even knowing there wasn't much they could do. It just felt like we needed them to come and keep a lookout. After that night, nothing similar ever happened again. Not to toot my own horn, but I am on the more attractive side, and what really scares me is the possibility of a young woman living alone in a single house. It makes me wonder if it's possible that this was someone who lives on my street or one of my neighbors. I'll guess I never know. When my mom and dad divorced, my mom got 2 of the 5 houses that my dad owned. My dad owns a very successful real estate company, so we have or had places basically everywhere. I'm 23 years old, so I really just stay wherever, but I usually stay at one of my mom's houses, now because I'm closer with her. This was one of the many weeks that my mom was at our beach house, and I was alone at the main house. I'm used to having the house to myself more often than not. The setup in the main house is a kitchen, living room, and 2 bedrooms, upstairs, and then the same thing on the first floor, and then the basement. My bedroom is in the upstairs. I mainly use the kitchen and living room up there, while my mom uses the downstairs for herself. It's a nice setup. The house has 3 entrances, a front, back, and a side entrance. The side entrance leads out to where all the garbage cans and such go. The story really begins when I started noticing a lot of my clothing were missing. I'd call my mom anytime this happened. If she wasn't home and asked if she'd move anything out of my clothing basket, usually she'd say no, since we live in separate floors of the house. But even this couple of weeks that I was home alone an extended period of time, I was noticing some of my favorite shirts were missing. My room is pretty messy, admittedly, but even after digging through everything, I couldn't find a bunch of specific pieces of clothing. It made no sense. I even resorted to checking my car and the downstairs in my mom's room, nothing. I came up with the idea that maybe one of my friends or multiple friends took my clothing for whatever reason, or more realistically, that they'd eventually come up on their own and I just left it at that. When I'm home alone, I sleep with the door cracked open, just so I could hear if, God forbid, someone was trying to break in. I was watching a movie on my laptop when my bedroom door suddenly shut. It didn't slam, but it didn't exactly close softly either. I had the ceiling fan on and both windows, so I thought maybe it was the draft. It does sometimes happen, but then I heard something from outside of my bedroom. down in the hall. My reaction isn't exactly what most people do while home alone. I got out of bed and ran to the door and opened it. The hallway light was off. I turned it on, then walked towards the living room, and there was no one sitting on the couch or anything nightmarish like that. I wasn't satisfied yet though. I went downstairs to my mom's floor and looked around in her room and the kitchen and the living room, but then I noticed the basement door. The light switch for the basement is right on top of the stairs. It's a string you pull down. I went down into the basement, the relatively unused basement. There's just a couch, TV, a few workout machines, and a small room with a punching bag down. There's also 4 doors that lead to closets and smaller doors. You have to crouch down to get to these little crawl spaces. Neither my mom nor I really go down there at all. I caught a glance through my vision, a little door to the crawl space closet. Moved just a little bit. My heart literally dropped, but I approached it just a little bit. I stopped, and now I felt like my heart just completely stopped. As well, when an arm came out from the darkness of the little closet and pulled the door ever so slightly shut. I quietly but quickly went back up to the stairs, wanting to run and be out of this house. I called 911 first thing and reported that there was a stranger in my house. Thank God I was quiet about leaving the basement and didn't give away the fact that I saw someone in there. The police showed up with their lights but not their sirens. All 4 of them came down to the basement with me and they ordered the person to come out the closet. The door slowly opened and there was a bald 50-something-year-old man with a nose too small for a squished looking face. He had his hands up and he was wearing one of my shirts. In fact, inside of the crawl-in closet were a number of my mom's and I's belongings, mostly clothing. The whole closet smelled like pee, which begged the question how long he'd been there, since there was no visible damage in the house, other than stains. Several of our belongings were found in his possession. He was charged with 3rd-degree burglary. Somehow that's it. My mom and I obviously didn't want any of the clothes that guy wore. I learned my lesson: lock the doors. The idea that someone could be in your house, even living in it at any moment, because of an unlocked door should not be taken lightly.